Hey guys, I'm really excited to spend a little time with you today talking through what we call an orientation. And let me tell you right up front that I really, out of everything that we do in our business, what you and I are going to talk through today literally is the most important part of Primerica. And the reason I said that, if you came to me and said, hey, my grandmother left me $1 million, can you help me invest this money? I wouldn't take that conversation as seriously as I would take this. If you really get this, if this makes sense to you today, this conversation is worth way more than $1 million to you and me. And I want to make sure that you know right up front the seriousness that we're looking at. So I'd encourage you to grab something to write with, grab something to write on, and take notes as we go through this. Because at the end of the day, we all want a great big business. We all want a happily ever after. We want to get the girl right off into the sunset. But to have a great ending to the story, I think it helps to have a great beginning to the story. And the way we begin the story is determined based off what it is we think we're here to do. And let me give you a little bit of background on what I mean by this. A few years ago, there was an article in the Harvard Business Review, and it was really a fascinating story, and it has everything to do with you and I talking about Primerica today. And they looked at the railroad industry basically through the 20th century. In the early 1900s, the wealthiest families in our country were the railroad families. They controlled transportation east to west. They had the most money. By the end of that century, by the year 2000, that was no longer the case. And the article really dug in to find out what happened. And what they found was fascinating. What they found was that the railroad families, the railroad business, misclassified the industry that they were in. They thought they were in the railroad industry, when in fact they were really in the transportation industry. And so when the interstate highways and the trucking companies and the airplanes came along, well, they took most of the market share. And what's interesting is if the railroad folks would have actually known they were part of a bigger picture, they would have just bought the trucks and bought the planes. They had the money. But instead, they threw their money into more rails, faster cars, more engineers, and they got beat. And the reason that applies to you and me today is because in our industry, especially with Primerica, our business can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I've had folks sit down and take a look at Primerica and say, well, this is kind of like an insurance business. And I say sort of, but not really. Or people will sit down and say, well, it's kind of like an asset management or a brokerage business. Kind of, but it's bigger than that. And again, I want to make sure you see exactly what you're looking at. See, in our industry, there are professionals that are as narrow-focused or as narrow-minded, you could say, as just focusing on the variable annuity business. That's all they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a variable annuity is a great retirement product. We market a couple of variable annuities here at Primerica, but that's all they do. They make their entire living just selling variable annuities. Or you could take a step back and say, I'm not just in the variable annuity business, I'm in the investment business, which means I can do variable annuities, or I can do mutual funds or 529s or 401ks or managed accounts and make even more money. You could step back one more time and say, I'm not even just in the investment business, I'm in the financial services business, which means I can do all of the investments, but I can also do debt elimination plans and legal protection plans and auto and homeowners insurance and life insurance and make even more money. Or you can take the biggest step back of all and say, I'm not even in the financial services business. I'm in the distribution of financial services business, which means you can do all those things, but you can also recruit, train, develop, license 25, 50, 100 other licensed agents that can go out and help families with all of those things, in which case you make the most money of all. So to get started today, I want to start with something pretty basic. I think one of the toughest parts about our business, or at least the toughest part I've found in the last 12 and a half years that I've been here, is how to get people to start thinking like a business owner as opposed to an employee. And I know for most people that goes in one ear and right out the other, because for 25, 35, 45 years, we've been told to go to school, get good grades, keep your nose clean, go to college, get a great education, get a good job with benefits, and life's going to work out fine for you. But these two people are completely different creatures. See, an employee gets to go home every day at 5 o'clock, even if the job's not done. Well, business owners can't do that. Right? An employee's favorite time of day is lunchtime. Business owners rarely take a lunch. I'll bring my lunch to the office. I might take a client to lunch, but there's no way I'm going to waste an hour eating a burger when I've got a business to run. See, just like a parent will make some sacrifices for the benefit of their children, a business owner will do the same thing for his business. See, as a parent, I'll give up eating so my children can eat better. I'll give up sleep so my children can sleep better. A business owner will give up some things for the health of their business. But an employee is never going to do that. An employee is never going to skip lunch to make sure we add more money to the bottom line. And I want you to understand the difference between these two individuals. And so let's start with this. Let's start by stepping away from Primerica to begin with, and let's even step away from brokerage businesses altogether. Let's say that you and I have been best friends since high school, and we've always had a dream together, and that's to run a great restaurant, like a steakhouse, like a really, like a Ruth's Chris, not a Texas Roadhouse. I mean, I want a nice steakhouse. We can have a great business plan, which is we want to be profitable in 3 years. We can have a great mission statement, which is we want to serve a great steak in a fun atmosphere. But at some point, if we don't take action, well, then our dream stays a dream. So we have to ask ourselves, what are the action steps we would have to take to make sure that we build our great steakhouse? Well, I think if we work through this together, you'll find it's actually quite simple. I think the first thing we would have to do is we'd have to find a great location, right? You've heard that, location, location, location. We want to be out on some main drag. Everybody can see us, easy to get to. And with that location, we're probably going to spend most of our money because we're going to have to buy the building. We're going to have to buy the tables and the chairs. We're going to have to buy the steak, lobster, and wine. We're probably going to dump $500,000 up front. But that's just the way you start a business. Once we have the location, the next thing we'd have to do is, well, we've got to run it compliantly. We have to play by the rules. So there are some licenses that we have to get. We have to get an FDA inspection. We've got to get the right zoning permits. We've got to get a liquor license, right? And that stuff's a major pain in the backside. But if we don't do that, and they find out we didn't do that, we're out of business and we're out of $500,000. So we've got to play by the rules. The third step to run a great steakhouse is I think we have to surround ourselves with great people. Now, some people call it staffing, some people call it HR, I call it build a team. It's the same thing, it just sounds more fun to build a team, but we need a cook to cook, a server to serve, a hostess to host, a bartender to tend, right? Because if we're starting a restaurant, you and I are not gonna work 24/7, and I promise you don't want me anywhere near the kitchen. So we've gotta have great people that we've surrounded ourselves with. I would tell you, I think that's the most important step. We can have a great restaurant, we can have great steak, we can have a great chef, but if our waitress is a jerk, they're not coming back. So we've got to have great people. And then fourth and finally, somebody has to eat the steak or we don't make money. So fourth, we have to build clients. Now, the good news is it takes like 2 minutes to come up with the 4 steps to run a great steakhouse. The bad news is for you and me is we're not starting a steakhouse. Right? We're starting a Primerica office, a financial business. So we have to look at these 4 steps and we have to ask ourselves this. Are these 4 things simply unique to the restaurant industry? Or are these 4 things part of every American business? And I think you'll agree that these 4 things are part of every American business. If you're going to be successful at Primerica, are you going to have a great location? Well, obviously, right? And you've probably seen a great location, 2,500, 3,500, 4,500 square feet, beautiful office, tables, chairs, computers, fax machines, office personnel, fake trees. I mean, we've got it all. And the most expensive part of you running a business, we took care of for you for now. But the other 3 things, well, the other 3 things you are going to have to bring to the table, right? Are you going to have to get a license? Well, of course, right? And we can provide the book and the teacher and the class. We can even study with you one-on-one. We just can't show up and take the test for you. Are you going to have to learn how to build and maintain a client base, client relationships? Of course. Are you going to have to learn how to build a team of people? Well, yeah, if you want a big business. Now, ultimately, you and I both know that 9 out of 10 small businesses in America today fail. And they don't fail because the business owner makes too much money too soon. They fail because the business owner makes too many mistakes too soon, right? And hopefully most of us learn from our own mistakes, but wise people learn from other people's mistakes. And one of the greatest benefits you're gonna have working with our company are the years of experience we've got on the things that worked well, but also the things that didn't. That we can coach you how to avoid some of the pitfalls, maybe the mistakes that we made, so it should go faster for you, it should go better for you than it did even for us, because you have somebody that's mentoring you, helping you navigate that path. But in business, some mistakes that we make are just a slap on the wrist. Right? Hey, don't say it like that. Next time, say it like this. But some mistakes in business are fatal mistakes. There's no overcoming some mistakes you can make in business. And I think in my career at Primerica, one of the biggest fatal mistakes I've watched people make is they try to do one and then the other and then the other, as opposed to doing all 3 things at the exact same time. We have to do all 3 things at the same time. In a restaurant, it makes perfect sense. What happens in our restaurant if we buy all of our steak months before our cook is ready to cook? The steak goes bad. What happens if we have steak and a cook but no clients? We have cook steak that goes bad. A cook and clients, but no steak, right? You get my point. You have to have all three. But in my business, it's not that easy to see. Sometimes a person will sit down and say, well, how could I possibly build a team or build a client base, Jeff, if I've not been licensed and trained? Which on the surface sounds like a very logical question. But if we follow that logic through, you get rocked here, crushed. Because two things. Number one, you don't ever know everything about everything ever in life. I mean, every day is a journey. But number two, if that was really the path a person was going to go down, well then for months they'd be doing nothing but studying for tests, taking quizzes, taking exams, getting licenses. They'd be bored to death because all they would be doing would be studying. I've seen people quit from sheer boredom. Secondly is they haven't helped any families or served any clients, so you didn't make any money, so you're bored and broke. And then thirdly, you didn't recruit anybody or build a team, so you're bored, broke, and lonely. Not exactly what we're going for, but let's say that was the path against my counsel. That's the path you chose to go down. And 6 months from now, you're still here because you were just too hard-headed to quit, which at that point could be a bad thing, could be a good thing. But 6 months from now, you finally recruit your first person. Well, what are you going to teach that person to do? Same thing you just did, right? It took you 6 months to do anything. It's going to take them 6 months to do anything because the team takes on the characteristics of the coach. So if you're a slow starter and a low producer, you're going to attract people that are slow starters and low producers. But if you're a fast starter and a high producer, then you'll attract people like that. So if I waited to do it, I got crushed. But the flip side of that coin was this. If it were up to me to build my own team and build my own client base out of the gate day one, I absolutely would have failed here. I was a 20-year-old punk farm kid. I knew nothing about nothing, right? I still know nothing about nothing, just not 20 anymore. But I absolutely would have failed. So you look at this and say, if I wait to do it, I get crushed. If I try to do it myself, I get crushed. How does this even work? So the reason that I can look you in your eyes and anybody else you put in front of us and promise you success is my first 30 to 60 days, I didn't build my team or my client base. The guy that recruited me, the best guy in the office, the guy been here for 18 years already. Not a person trying to be a successful business owner, a person who was a successful business owner. He built my team and he built my client base. Literally all I did was introduce him, sit, take notes, and watch. So I took him to see mom and dad. Mom and dad asked questions. He answered those questions and I took notes. We saw most of my aunts and uncles. They asked similar questions. He answered those questions and I took notes. So after I'd seen 4 or 5 appointments, I had heard almost every question that could be asked and I knew the answers. I was trained. So you're going to watch as we build you a team of 2 or 3 or 4 licensed agents that are working with you. You're going to watch as we build you 7, 8, 9, 10 happy clients that love Primerica, have been helped by us in a big, big way. You're going to watch as we build you 20, 30, 40, 50 warm referrals of people that actually want to talk to you. So that you've got a little team in place, you've seen it done, you've got some experience, you've made some money, but best of all, you watched us do it. So that you can go from being a trainee to independent as a soloist. Meaning you don't need my help or a trainer's help to show up and do an appointment for you, but to move from a soloist, more importantly, to a trainer. See, and it's really critical that you see everything we do through our eyes as trainers. Look, you're going to be a trainee maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks, but you're going to be a trainer the rest of your career. And I need you to see things through our eyes as trainers because, I promise you, there's going to be times, probably before this is even done today, that we're going to say something or you're going to be in a training class or you're going to be on a conference call and you're going to hear something that just hits you funny. And it is going to be, that is so weird. I don't know why you would say it like that. That makes no sense to me. And every time that happens, and I promise it's going to happen. Every time that happens, you have to come back to this same foundation, is that you and I were never before taught to be business owners. Right? If you use me, for example, I got my first real job at 16 years old. Dad said, you can drive, you can work. And I went to work for a small business and I was taught at 16 years old how to be an employee. But I was taught that by a small business owner. Now, why do you suppose that small business owner didn't teach me to be a small business owner just like him? Right, because if I knew everything that he knows in a couple of years, I'll go open up a shop and compete with him. But then at 18, I go to college and I'm studying, taking business classes, studying how to be a business owner, but I'm being taught by professors who are employees. So at 16, I'm being taught to be an employee by a business owner. At 18, I'm being taught to be a business owner by an employee. At Primerica was the first and only time in my life that I could be taught how to be a business owner by a business owner. So if anything's weird, it's not this. Paying $60,000 for a business degree being taught by someone who's never run a business, that's messed up. right? So ultimately, you and I both know this. You and I both know that business owners don't get paid for what they do. Business owners get paid for what other people do. And you are, like it or not today, you are the CEO, president, vice president, chairman of the board of your own company. And you have the opportunity to get the best employees you could ever ask for. Go to work in your company today. Us. We are very good at what we do, and we'll do it for you. We can set appointments for you, do appointments for you. We can sell for you. We can make money for you. We can get referrals for you, recruit people for you, train recruits for you. We can do it all for you if you'll use us. But if you don't, then we'll just go find somebody else that will. See, we don't know yet whether or not you can build a team or you can build a client base. We don't know, maybe 50-50, let's say. But we know with 100% certainty that we can. So you can learn this business one of two ways. You can learn this business watching us build our teams and our client base. Or you can learn this business watching us build your team and your client base, which obviously makes the most sense. So the next thing I want to talk about is this. I believe that ultimately the big difference between success and failure in business is this. It really is the difference between hindsight and foresight. Now, obviously, hindsight's easy. Everybody has hindsight. Hindsight's 20/20. But foresight is incredibly rare, but it pays huge money. And I think if you look at the last 50, 60 years in our country, two of the greatest business models that average families could have taken advantage of. Now, most didn't, but we could have, and been wildly successful was this. I think number one was brokerage businesses, really made popular by real estate and let's just say RE/MAX. And number two was franchise businesses, really made popular by McDonald's. Now, like I said, two businesses anybody could have started, most didn't. And I'd like to think if you and I could go back to 1955 and buy a McDonald's, we'd be worth a couple of bucks today. But when I talk about hindsight, foresight, here's what I mean. You know that if I bought a McDonald's today, and I called all my buddies and said, hey, I got my first McDonald's, it's going to be unbelievable, grand opening in a couple of months. Every single one of my friends would have been like, oh my goodness, man, you bought a McDonald's? I didn't know you had it like that. Man, we've been cool a real long time, bud. Why don't you cut me in 10%, partner? Look, they wouldn't be saying things like that because they think McDonald's is going to be a great idea. Right? It already has been. That's hindsight. But if you, me, and Ray Kroc, if we went back to 1955 and we're sitting in my broke uncle's apartment. Now keep in mind, at 55, not every town had a restaurant. Franchises were by no means popular. And if we were sitting in my broke uncle's apartment and Ray Kroc starts selling him the dream, like we found the perfect system, we're going to sell hamburgers for 10 cents a piece, we're going to have 35,000 stores around the world, give more middle-class families and immigrants a chance to become millionaires than have ever been done before in American history. And I can get you in for $5,000, just $5,000 a day, I can get you in. You know what my uncle would have done? He'd have kicked him out. Leave. I'm not paying $5,000 for a job. Franchises aren't even going to last. Go. And he'd have missed the opportunity of a lifetime. Right? And if you ever talk to people that could have bought a McDonald's and didn't, and believe me, there's a bunch of people like that. Most of them are like, oh, well, you know, you win some, you lose some. You win some, you lose some. That was a multi-million-dollar mistake, and you didn't even try. See, there's never shame in trying and failing. The shame is in never even trying, never getting off the sidelines and getting into the game. But anyway, let's come back, and I want to talk about these two companies and how they were built, because it has everything to do with our conversation about Primerica today. Let's look at RE/MAX first. Obviously, Mr. RE/MAX had a vision to build an empire, arguably one of the most premier, prestigious real estate firms in the country. I mean, almost every neighborhood and every town across the country has a house for sale today by RE/MAX. We have to ask ourselves, what was Mr. RE/MAX's, what was his vision, what was his business plan? Day one, looking forward to build this great company. What do you think his strategy was? Do you think his strategy was, I'm just going to sell all the houses by myself? Was that a strategy? Right? No, I mean, that's laughable. What did Mr. RE/MAX do? Mr. RE/MAX recruited people that we call brokers. And brokers are the ones that run local offices. Now, do you think their strategy was, I'm going to sell every house by myself? Right? Not even close. That pyramid went farther because brokers went out and recruited people that we call agents, realtors. Right? Now, agents are the folks that help families buy houses and sell houses. And so an agent's going to make anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on how hard they work and how good they are. A broker's going to make anywhere from $250 to $500. and Remax is going to make a couple of billion. So what you've got is you have a big business owner that recruits a small business owner, and a small business owner that recruits a salesman. And the reason the agent gets paid the least amount of money is because there's only one person whose efforts the agent can get paid from, their own. And if you don't sell a house, you don't eat. But a broker makes money off all of her agents, and Remax makes money off the whole deal. Same is true with McDonald's. Ray Kroc was never the guy that said, I want to cook a burger, flip a burger, serve a burger. Ray Kroc recruited people that we call operators or owners. Right? Those weren't the people that said, I want to cook burgers, flip burgers, serve burgers. That pyramid went farther too, because they recruit people that we call employees. And they pay employees, $8 an hour to cook burgers or clean toilets, $30,000 a year to manage the store. Owner's going to make $250 to $500 grand, and McDonald's makes a couple of billion. Same thing, big business owner that recruits small business owner, and small business owner recruits employee. And I'm telling you, that's not kind of how those two companies were built. That's exactly how those two companies were built. Which means at this point in the conversation, we do have to talk a little bit about perception. I've had folks sit down before and they say, okay, wait. So I can get somebody who gets somebody. Oh, I've seen something like this before. I'm like, no. You've not seen anything like this before. One time I had somebody say to me, they said, Jeff, if you were born in China, you'd speak Chinese. And I kind of chuckled at it, dismissed it. I thought it was kind of silly, but I thought about it later. And that's absolutely true. If you would have taken me at 2 weeks old and moved me to China and I was raised in China, I speak Chinese. We're products of our environment. Now, clearly I wasn't born in China, but I was born into the middle class. So I was taught to think like the middle class, act like the middle class, work like the middle class, and get paid like the middle class. See, all of my family and friends were salespeople or employees. Not bad people, awesome people, but they were all at the bottom. I had friends that sold houses, sold cars, sold jewelry, sold cell phones. But a salesman's a salesman. And I had family that were employees in healthcare, employees in manufacturing, employees in retail. But an employee is an employee, right? Not bad people, just economically at the bottom of the chain. So imagine how crazy it must have sounded to them 12 and a half years ago when I came home and said, I'm going to be a businessman. They were like, what, are you crazy? Like, no, I'm going to recruit 1,000 agents. We're going to open up 50 offices in 7 different states. It's going to be unbelievable. I'm going to be a businessman. And they thought it was crazy. Are you going to recruit me now? What are you, nuts? Right? And when these people tell you that recruiting is crazy, and trust me, they're going to, they don't really mean recruiting is crazy. What they mean is they've just never done any recruiting before. See, at this position in the game, we've always been taught to get recruited. We've never been taught to recruit, right? You and I both know that there are classes in college today where all they teach people are how to put together a resume, how to ask the right questions on a job interview, and basically how to beg for a job. So all of my buddies come out of school, they go buy a $10 sheet of paper, not a ream, a sheet, right? Cardstock. They type up a resume. They put on their one and only suit. They walk into a man's office. They sit in a way they've never sat, and they start speaking a language they've never spoken. Like my professional ambitions would use my diversified talents in your global operation. And you're like, oh man. So, well, tell me, sir, what would you describe as your greatest weakness? You're like, well, sir, my greatest weakness is I'm an overachiever. Right? And you're laughing because it's true. We've been taught to get recruited. So if I would have gone to my family and friends and said, well, if you think recruiting is a weird way to run a business or to build a business, I still want to be a businessman, what's your advice? 100 out of 100 would have given me the exact same advice because it is the middle class way to start a business. Right? They all would have said, right, you got to go back to school, Jeff, and finish your bachelor's because I dropped out. And then you got to go get a couple years experience working with a big company. And then you got to go back and get your master's, your MBA. And after that, go get a couple more years experience with a big company. Then, Jeff, you're ready to start your business. Right? Well, name me, here's what I looked at. Name me one person that actually did it like that. Name me just one. Because that's not the way the story goes. Study successful business owners. Here's the story. Started a business, failed. Started a second business, failed. Started a third business, got rich. Right? You look at some of the most successful business owners today. Bill Gates dropped out. Steve Jobs dropped out. Zuckerberg dropped out. And Oprah dropped out. They all dropped out to go get into the game. Because what's the best way to get experience working for yourself? Work for yourself. The best way to get experience running a business is to run a business. So if I would have listened to my family and friends, they were wrong, and I would have failed. And I can't tell you how powerful that statement is. How many people sit down and get started with Primerica, and then they go home and talk to somebody who's never owned a business, they got no money, and they ask them if they think this is a great idea. What do you think they're going to tell you? Right? And then they call me back and, well, I've been thinking. I was like, no, see, that's the problem. You haven't been thinking. If you were thinking, you'd be back in my office getting trained right now. Right? We got to be very, very careful who we listen to. So let's pretend for just a second that I didn't come from the middle class. Let's pretend I came from the rich. Let's say that my dad owned businesses, had time and money and wealth and influence, and now I turn 20 years old, and it's time for me to go make my mark in business. And I decide I want to go into real estate. Let's say my dad's got a best friend named Bob the broker. Bob owns the biggest RE/MAX office, let's say, in the entire state, and I call it Bob, and I say, hey, Bob, I just bought a RE/MAX. I want to be just like you. Can I buy you lunch and pick your brain? He'd say, yeah, sure, let's meet. So I go buy lunch for Bob tomorrow. And I say, Bob, I want everything you got. I want a big house, a fast car, time, money, wealth, influence. But before you give me any advice, Bob, I need you to know I've already made up my mind that for the first year, I'm not going to recruit any agents. He'd be like, are you crazy? How do you think I sell 200 houses a month, Jeff? How do you think I got a big house and a fast car, Jeff? See, a broker without an agent is an agent. What are you, nuts? Oh man, well, I didn't think about that. Well, maybe real estate's not my gig. And let's say I want to go into food and franchising. So let's say I call my dad's other buddy, Fred, the franchise owner. I know it's corny, but you'll remember it. And let's say Fred owns 6 Subways and I buy a sandwich shop. And I call Fred and say, Fred, man, I want to be just like you. Can I buy you lunch and pick your brain? He says, sure, let's meet. So I go buy lunch for Fred. And I do the same thing. Fred, man, I want everything you got. Time, money, wealth, influence, big house, fast car. But before you give me any advice, I think it's fair that I tell you that for the first 12 months, I'm not hiring anybody. He'd start looking around for the hidden camera like he was being punked. Because nobody's that stupid. So what are you going to do, Jeff? You're going to order the sandwich, make the sandwich, cashier the sandwich, clean it up, do it all over again 7 days a week, 365 days a year? What are you, crazy? I know what's my point. You already know this. That every time you come to a fork in the road, no matter which decision you make, somebody's talking trash. See, if you choose to go to the right, everybody on the left calls you crazy. If you go to the left, everybody on the right calls you crazy. If you stay in the middle, both sides call you lazy and indecisive. Either way, somebody's talking trash. Here was my dilemma. If I went out and started recruiting people, these guys called me crazy. If I didn't go recruit people, these guys called me crazy. Either way, I was getting called crazy. My decision was this. You guys can call me crazy all the way to the bank. I'm going here. Because the only 2 positions in American business are recruit or get recruited. That's it. And as powerful as that conversation is, that still hasn't had the biggest impact out of everything we're going to talk about today. The next thing I'm going to share with you literally had the biggest impact on my career, my business. These were things I wish somebody would help me explain day one. I think I could have gone even faster than I did, and it's why I'm sharing this with you today. The biggest part of this that changed the way I looked at business was what I'm about to tell you. See, I came in, like most people, asking all the wrong questions. Right? I came in asking client questions because, like most of us, we were taught to go to school, get a good job. And at the employee level of every corporation, even in mid-level management, the focus is always on the client. Where do I get my clients? Client relationship, upsell the client retention, client referrals, client satisfaction. It's all about the client. And don't get me wrong, that's not bad. We do an unbelievable job taking care of our clients. I'm just talking to you today as a business owner, as a business person. So I came in asking all those clients. But here's the interesting thing. The conversations happening on the corporate jets today have nothing to do with clients. Those conversations are all about people and personnel. Right? Bob's going to retire next year as VP of Operations. Who should we have replace Bob? Mary in accounting is doing an unbelievable job. We should promote her into management. Right? All those conversations are about people and personnel. Right? Not necessarily about clients. Right? And well, think about this. Think about this. When I talk about business, here's what I want you to get. What I did not understand 12 and a half years ago that Primerica helped me clearly understand is this. In American business, the farther away you get from the client, the more money you make. Now think about that. The farther away you get from the client, the more money you make. I can take you down to McDonald's right now. I can buy you a double cheeseburger. The kid that hands you the sandwich is making about $8 an hour, maybe, directly dealing with you, the client. The manager that trained him, she's back in her office making 30 grand a year, not dealing with the client. The franchise owner's making $250, not even in the store. And McDonald's Corporation is making a couple of billion. The farther away you get from the client, the more money you make. See, I think if I were to, God rest his soul, if I were to talk to Ray Kroc today, if I were to share with Ray Kroc our business, I think the questions he would ask would be totally different than the questions I asked when I got started. I think his first question would be, Jeff, what's the maximum number of locations I could run? Like, oh man, that's a great question. Well, there is no maximum. He'd be like, well, what about territory restrictions on my locations? We don't have any of those either. He said, well, who can I get to run these locations? I said, anybody you want. I mean, they got to be 18, got to be a good person. Anybody you want. So he'd look at me and say, so you're telling me I can have as many as I want, anywhere I want them, and get anybody I want to run them. That's exactly what I'm saying. From that second forward, all he'd be thinking about is who do I know in Miami and Dallas and San Fran and DC and New York, and all he'd be thinking about is people and locations. And I came in asking who wants to buy a policy. You see the difference in that? I mean, by the time I'd find 10 clients, he'd have 10 offices up and running. Right? So when you look at our business, here's the truth, is you can be any one of these three positions that you choose to be. And you're not going to get a ton of pressure from me after today. I just want you to know what's on the table. We have people at Primerica that all they really want to be is an agent. They love selling. They love the one-on-one interaction with clients. They love the emotional satisfaction of seeing the before and the after. Some that are really, really good at what they do make 60, 70 grand. Some that are excellent at what they do make 100 grand a year. But they're never going to make more than that because there's only 24 hours in a day, and at some point you get tired. Or you could choose to think a little bit bigger, like maybe our regional vice presidents. And you would say, well, I don't necessarily want to find the clients. I just want to find the people who find the clients. And in which case you make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. Or you could think even bigger yet, like some of our senior vice presidents, national sales directors, senior national sales directors, and say, you know what, I don't even want to find the people who find the clients. I want to find the people who find the people who find the clients. And in which case you make a couple of $1 million. See, I honestly was not thinking that big when I got started with this company, and I'm not suggesting you're thinking that big today. I just need you to know day one that that's what's on the table here, and you should get your questions answered and piece this together. Now, when I got started, just like you are right now, once I got past the first question that most people ask, which the first question most people ask is it legit? Right, because we talk a good game, they've never heard of Primerica before, and if we're still wrestling with that at this point in the conversation, we need to hit pause, and we need to fix that. We need to get on New York Stock Exchange, NYSE.com, or Yahoo Finance, or Money Magazine. I mean, of course it's legit. You can't be the world's biggest financial services marketing firm, licensed in all 50 states, publicly traded, and not be legit. But once I got past that first question, well, then I no longer cared what broke Uncle Freddie or Cousin Joe had to say. And what do I mean by that? Most of the people that I talked to when I got started were very supportive of my business. When they looked at it and said, oh my goodness, this is great. You're going to help so many people. It's going to be tough, but you can do this. What a great concept. But eventually I ran into a couple of people that were like, Primerica. Why does that sound familiar? Oh, no. My cousin did that thing. She didn't make no money. And I literally have had people get into that conversation, turn around, come back to me and quit. Like, oh, I knew it was too good to be true. I knew I wasn't going to make any money. I said, listen, back the truck up. Right? And I obviously wasn't as committed 12 years ago as I am today. You don't ask somebody to marry you on your first date. But if I said I'm going to check this deal out, it's going to take a lot more than that to knock me off my horse. So the next time it happened, I decided to fight back. I was like, well, tell me about your cousin. Did she ever take her state class, take her state test, get her state license? What do you think the answer was? No. Did she ever sit down with a family, serve a client, help a family? No. Well, how long was your cousin here? I don't know, like 3-4 weeks. I'm like, okay, so what you're telling me is your cousin didn't work. And the guy goes, yeah, you're right, my cousin pretty much quits everything. Now think about that. An objection pops up. Some people throw away a multi-million-dollar career. I flex back at it. It falls down. It's not even an objection. And here's the crazy part. God's honest truth. I've had that guy that kind of scouted me, said, don't waste your time. That guy, 2 months later, come work in my office. Now, how does that even happen? How do you go from telling me not to do something and then you doing that same thing? I'll tell you how that happens. Nobody's ever going to see your business for what your business actually is. They're only going to see your business for how you portray it. See, his cousin, she treated it like it was nothing. She didn't take it serious. She didn't dress sharp. She never went to class, never took her test, never went to training, didn't listen to the CDs, didn't do anything we asked her to do, treated it like it was nothing, so he thought it was nothing. Well, I came along and treated it like a multi-million-dollar business. I mean, I got some nice clothes. I went to training every week. I took my class, my test. I sat in with clients, listened to all the CDs, never missed training. I did everything they asked me to do. I treated it like a multi-million-dollar business, so when he saw it from me, it was a multi-million-dollar business. Primerica didn't change. The person portraying Primerica changed. But we got to get past that first question, because that's not the question that you and I have to answer. Of course it's legit. The question you and I have to answer is, what are you going to do about it? You see, just because it's the greatest American business opportunity, it still is an American business opportunity. If you do nothing, you get nothing. What are you going to do about it? And when I say that, here's what I mean. I got started out of a little office about an hour north of here, and there were like 20, 25 of us coming to training each week, and they would talk to us every single week about being a regional vice president, having your own office, making $100,000 a year. And man, I bought off on that. I wanted my own office, $100,000 a year. But I wasn't naive enough to believe that all 25 of us were getting our own offices. And I pray you're not that naive either. There's going to be 100 people in my office for training this week. You know not all 100 are going to get their own office. Now, they could, but you know they won't. So what I wanted to know is, what do I got to do to be the guy that gets that and not the guy that doesn't? So when I say, what are you going to do about it, I don't by any means mean shady or underhanded or lowball. I don't mean that at all. I mean the real business stuff. Are you willing to show up early and stay late? Are you willing to find the answers? Are you willing to work harder than the person next to you? Are you willing to get knocked down and pick yourself back up again and again? Because in American business, it's guts and tenacity that wins, not brains and talent. See, I think honestly that when you look at our country today, I'd say that maybe 5% of the country has what you and I want. They have unlimited time and unlimited money. My question for you is this: are you going to be the 1 out of 20 that gets that? Or the 19 out of 20 that ends up average and ordinary just like everybody else? See, we can get you to be that one here. And we can do that without you going into debt and without you working 100 hours a week. But it's not going to just fall into your lap. You have to meet us halfway. So when you look at the way that Primerica builds its business, I want to talk about it because it's really built almost like every other brokerage business builds there. See, if you go down the street to a State Farm agent, you're going to find a small office with a team of agents. You go to Edward Jones, small office, team of agents. You go to RE/MAX, small office, team of agents. And so Primerica runs its business model exactly like that. We run our business model out of offices and a team of agents. So Primerica runs its business out of offices. Offices are owned and operated by regional vice presidents. Right, and regional vice presidents help us hire and train agents. And I'm going to throw the word licensed in there. So you don't really make the team until you get that license. And we really want you to get that done ASAP. And then agents help families fix their financial challenges through what we call a financial needs analysis. And that financial needs analysis gives you and I two huge competitive advantages in the marketplace. See, competitive advantage number one is we make way more money per client than anybody else in the industry. See, we deal with all 7 areas of finance as opposed to just one. And let me give you an example. Right, let's say that my wife and I got married and started a little family, and so now I need to buy some life insurance. And so I call up a life insurance company and say, hey, I want to buy a policy. Can you help me with that? Of course, they say yes. But a couple years later, when I want to get a mortgage and buy a house, can my life insurance company do that for me? No. See, they just left money on the table, right? So I got to go someplace else, a mortgage company, right, to get a mortgage for my house. Let's say a couple years after that, I want to set up a college account for my daughter, right? Can my mortgage company do my investments? No. See, they just left money on the table. What I know about good business people is they don't make a habit of leaving money on the table. Since you do everything with Primerica, you're going to get everything. You're going to get the 401k rollover dollars, the debt elimination dollars, the legal protection dollars, the life insurance, the car insurance, homeowners insurance dollars. You're going to get it all because we do it all. Competitive advantage number one. But competitive advantage number two is this. Despite popular opinion, American business is not just about making money. It has to also be about helping people. See, if all you're doing is making money, but you're not helping people, you're not going to be in business very long. But if all you're doing is helping people and you're not making money, well, you're already out of business. So when you look at the help that we offer families today, it is literally second to none. And to give you an example, again, back to my wife and I, let's say when we got married, we looked at our budget and we had a couple $100 that was left over every month. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, but I wanted to be smart. I didn't want to blow the money. And so let's say I call my buddy, the insurance agent, and I said, hey man, I looked at our budget. We got a couple $100 and I want to do something smart with it. What do you suggest? Well, what do you think he's going to tell me? He's going to say, come buy some insurance. Now, does that make him a bad guy? No. It makes him an insurance agent. The same thing if I call my buddy that does investments. I said, I got a couple $100. What should I do? He'd say, well, come in and open up an account. But let's say that I called you. And I said, look, I got a couple $100 and I want to be smart. I'm just not real sure what to do with it. You say, well, let's sit down and look at this analysis and let's find out. And you get back with us in a couple of days. You say, here, guys, here's what I found out. Out of that 200, let's take 50 of it and put it towards your credit card debt. We can pay your credit cards off 4 years faster, save you $3,000 of interest. Let's take 50 of it and put it towards your retirement account. We can get you retired at 62, not 65. Let's take 50 and put it towards your daughter's college account. We can get her into Ball State. Not Butler, but we can get her into Ball State. And then you are a little underinsured, so let's put 50 of it there. Well, how much better of a solution for me is that as opposed to you just selling me what you get paid a commission to sell me? So the help that we provide families today is unarguably second to none. But I don't tell you that so you know how great our analysis is. I tell you that one more time to emphasize to you the difference in the way owners think and the way agents think. See, every single day, an agent wakes up with the same question on his mind. Where's my next sale? Where's my next deal? Where's my next paycheck? My next meal? Where's my next sale? And listen, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just the thought of that nauseates me, to think that every morning I've got to wake up and go kill something and drag it back to the cave. Right? I don't want any part of that. That's not why I came here. But you see, owners never think about where the sale comes from. Owners never worry about where the sale comes from. I mean, put it this way. Right? Primerica, I helped a couple of families last month with some insurance, some investments, and we did a great job for them. But do you think that Primerica and the executives and the board of directors, do you think they're sitting in some boardroom outside Atlanta, Georgia today talking about the families Jeff helped last month? No. They probably don't even know, that I did that. McDonald's, I drive through McDonald's every morning, get a cup of coffee on my way to the office. Do you think McDonald's is up in Chicago, some ivory tower talking about the cup of coffee Jeff had for breakfast this morning? No, they probably don't even know that I did. You know what the board of directors of McDonald's is talking about this morning? What do we have to do to get more stores running profitably in Central Indiana? Right? You know what the board of directors and the executives at Primerica are talking about this morning? What do we got to do to get more offices, right, running successfully in Central Indiana? And if Primerica is asking that question, how do we get more offices? And offices are staffed by licensed agents. Then what Primerica is really asking is, what do we got to do to get more licensed agents? And if Primerica is asking, what do we have to do to get more licensed agents? And a vice president like myself is asking, what do we got to do to get more licensed agents? Well, then a future regional vice president like you should be asking, what do we got to do to get more licensed agents? Because the man or woman with the most licensed agents always makes the most money. And that is so important. I'll say it again. The man or woman with the most licensed agents always makes the most money. Think about this. Let's say that you run a law firm and you have 30 licensed lawyers, and I run a law firm with 3. Who makes more? Well, you do. Let's say you run a music label with 100 artists, and I run a music label with 10. Who makes more money? You do. Now, do we get paid to hire artists? No, we get paid to sell records. But who's going to sell more records? Me with 10 or you with 100? You with 100. In business, whoever's got the most licensed agents always makes the most money. I make the money I make because of the size of licensed agents I have, right? Primerica makes the money Primerica makes because of the size of licensed agents they have. New York Life makes what New York Life makes because of the size of licensed agents they have. If you want to really make big money here, it has everything to do with how many licensed agents you build. So let me put it to you this way. Let's go back to a real estate example, but this time let's say that both of us run RE/MAX offices. So let's say that you run, RE/MAX West, and I run RE/MAX East. And let's say that in our business, identical demographics and home values, all that stuff. Let's say everything's the same, but here's the difference. Let's say that you have 30 licensed agents and I have 3. Now, we just talked about this, and we already know that you make more money in this equation, but let me add one more detail. Let's say that at the skill of selling houses, I'm twice as good as you are. And I've trained my agents to be half as good as me, and your agents are only half as good as you. Well, now who makes more money? Right, it's kind of a trick question. Let's do the math and let's look at this. Let's say every single month that I personally sell 4 houses and you personally sell 2. Right, so I'm out there, I'm beating the pavement and I'm finding clients, I'm selling 4 houses. Well, if my agents are half as good as me, they each sell 2. So 3 times 2 is 6 plus my 4, that's 10 houses being sold out of my brokerage this month. I'd like to think if we're selling 10 houses a month, we're doing all right. But your agents are half as good as you, which means they each sell 1. So those 30 plus your 2, look, you don't just make more money, you make way more money. 3 times to be exact. Now, when you look at this, there's actually 4 different positions in this example. There's the agent that every month sells 2, and the agent that every month sells 1. There's the broker that sells 4 personally and 10 on their team, and the broker that sells 2 personally, but 32 on their team. Right? Which one makes more money? This guy. Which one has even more freedom? This one. Which one has a bigger opportunity to make even more money next year? Yeah, you're right. Which goes to prove one very important point. In the business of selling houses, the number one skill to learn is not how to sell a house. The number one skill to learn is how to teach someone else to sell a house. Now look, we're not going to skip past training you. We obviously understand you have to know something in order to teach it to somebody else. So we'll do a great job training you. I just want you to think like a business owner for a second. That in business, whoever's got the biggest team of people is going to make the most money. Right? Think about this. So sometimes people will go back and forth. If I ask you this, people say, well, I want to be really, really good. Well, I want you to be good too, but I'd rather you be big. Right? Michael Jordan, was unarguably, I think, the greatest basketball player of all time. What are you going to ask yourself? When Jordan was in his prime, who made more money? Michael Jordan or the man that owned the Bulls? The man that owned the Bulls. Some people are like, oh, well, with Jordan's endorsements. I'm like, no. Look, it's not even close. Now, what are the chances the Bulls owner can jump from the free throw line and dunk a basketball? Not a chance. He still made more money than the greatest basketball player in the world. So they say in the music of business that David Geffen, made the most money as a producer than anybody ever has. Right? And when you look at him, Geffen can't sing, can't dance, and don't look good. But the reason he made the most money than anybody ever has in the music business is because he had 3 of the hottest bands on his label at the same time. Eagles, Aerosmith, and Guns N' Roses. Unbelievable money. So when you look at building something big, right? I came from a little bitty school. It was a 2A school, 100 kids in my graduating class. They would not even let us play football against a 4A or a 5A school. Now look, in football, it's 11 on 11. You put 11 on the field, I put 11 on the field. They wouldn't even let us play because our best 11 were 11 out of like 200. Their best 11 were 11 out of 2,000. It's not even fair. See, in sports, where there's rules on size, whoever's the best wins. But in war and in business, when there's no rules on size, whoever's the biggest wins. So I don't necessarily care how good you can be. What I care about is how big you can be. So let me wrap up and talk about what I was able to do to have the success I had early in my career. People ask me all the time, well, what did you do? And I had a fairly successful start. I was able to quit my full-time job within 4 months of signing up with Primerica. Became a regional vice president my 13th month with the company. So obviously had some success at the beginning. I could have done it faster, but people ask me, well, what did you do? And I said, honestly, it's quite simple. I did what I talked about earlier. I took my trainer to see mom and dad. I took him to see, my aunts and uncles. And then I took him to see some of our friends from church that had just had a baby, just bought a house, kind of the same boat that we were in. And people ask me all the time, well, why did you go see mom? And my answer is because I could. It was my mom. I would have talked to Joe Blow on the street corner, but Joe Blow's not going to give me 30 minutes. Mom would. I didn't even ask. I was like, hey, Mom, I'm coming over Monday at 7. Make sure Dad's home. She's like, okay, great. She was excited I was coming over, right? And so, when you look at that, there's a really important point here. See, the people that we want to talk to first to get your business moving, to get your business off the ground, and we want to talk to the 5, 6, 7, 8 people that you're absolutely closest to in your life, the ones that know you, the ones that you know, the ones that care about you, they want to see you succeed, the people that you're still going to know, right, 10, 15 years down the road. I'm going to tell you why we want to see those people first in your life. There's 2 reasons that we want to see those people for you to get your business moving. It is number 1, the reason I saw these people, the reason you want to see those people is because they're the ones most likely to help you out. See, listen, the motive, I'm going to get into the motive here in a second and why we want to go see these people for you, but they're the ones most willing to help. Right? I call my mom, I need a favor. You call my brother, I need a favor. You call your best friend, I need a favor. They're the ones most willing to help you out, right? I didn't need them to buy necessarily. And I honestly, listen, I don't care if they buy or if they join. That's not what this is about. I honestly, I couldn't care less. What I do care is they get this business explained to them by somebody that knows what they're talking about and they love what Primerica does. And I'm telling you, nobody ever gets this business explained to them by one of our certified trainers and walks away with a sour taste in their mouth. Never. Where we run into issues are when somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about talks way too much, way too soon. Right, but these folks, they were going to help me out. But see, I needed my trainer to go with me in order to be effective. Do you understand if I would have showed up to my parents' house by myself and said, let me show you the great things I can do with your money? Do you have any idea how that conversation would have ended? My dad would have said, why don't you pay me back the $50 you borrowed last week first? Right, you're not touching my checkbook. So they loved me, but they knew I wasn't an expert on the subject of money. Well, my trainer, he was the professional, right? For all they knew, he was in business one day longer than me, but he was the expert. So he walked in, had a shirt and tie, had the nice presentation. So once they saw that I was in capable hands, right, and that what Primerica did was great, I mean, it became an effective conversation. If my trainer didn't show up, if you don't take a trainer with you to talk to these people, it's not going to be as effective as it should be. People are like, hey, did you see that game last night? You want a piece of cake? How about a beer? And I was like, no, I need this to be business. So I needed my trainer to go with me so that they would sit down and listen. See, you and us, we have a win-win relationship, right? These people that you know in your life, you have enough credibility with them to get in front of them. But you don't have the expertise yet to earn their business. See, our trainers have the expertise to earn their business, but no credibility to get in front of them. So without you, we can't win. Without us, you can't win. We have a mutually beneficial relationship to work together to do this. So the first reason we want to see these people was they were the ones most willing to sit down. They would sit down for 40 minutes and listen to a presentation to help you get trained. And you've got to have that experience to start to get good at what we do. But the second reason that we wanted to see these people, we want to see these people for you, is because not only are they the ones most willing to help, but they are the ones most willing to refer. See, again, once my parents knew that I was in capable hands, my trainer was good at what he did, and then, of course, that I'm a good guy. They knew I wouldn't steal from somebody. And all of a sudden, they started referring people to me. If you talk to Mike and Lisa, well, you should talk to Dan and Vicky. And it was those referrals that kind of gave me life at the beginning of this business. Listen, I don't care who you are and what business you're starting. If you don't have a network of people that love you, love what you do, willing to tell people about it, it's impossible for you to succeed in business. But if you have people that love you and love what you do, telling people about it, well, it's impossible not to succeed. Right? And when I got started in Primerica, 6 out of the first 10 people that I talked to actually did business with me. Now look, those numbers are ridiculous. That is phenomenal numbers. And I'm not suggesting that it'll be that way for you. I'm just telling you that that's what it was for me. But I'm here to tell you today that some of the people that did not do business with me have had more to do with my success here than some of the people that did. Listen to that. I just told you some of the people that never bought had more to do with me winning than some of the people that did. One in particular was my aunt and uncle. Right? They still today don't own anything that Primerica sells. And it's not because they didn't love Primerica. They don't love what we do. It's because when I sat down and talked to them, they had low-cost term insurance, a ton of money in mutual funds, and no debt. They were the perfect example. They were the epitome of what we do. But when they saw what Primerica teaches, they said, well, those are the things we did to get here, but we had to kind of learn it on our own. You teach that to people for free? I said, yeah, that's what we do. Well, all of a sudden, they started talking to all kinds of people. You should see what Jeff does. You should go talk to my nephew. And why is that important? Because I'll have people that still come back into the office all been out of shape because their brother didn't buy or their cousin didn't join. Right? And I'm like, look, man, that is not what I'm after. Like, if my aunt and uncle actually bought from me, did that guarantee me success 12 months later? No. If they didn't buy from me, does that guarantee me failure 12 months later? No. So whether they did or didn't, it was a couple $100 one way or the other. To focus on that, you know, at the expense of building a relationship with somebody that would give me referrals for life, that would be like stepping over a $100 bill to pick up a penny. That'd be stupid. Right? So, you know, we want the referrals. Let me put it to you this way. Right? How often would you say today that the average person thinks about money? Constantly? They think about it constantly. And they talk about it at least once a week, right? Time to pay bills. Which means when they're at their jobs, right, and they're at the water cooler, then all of their friends are probably thinking about money constantly as well. The question we have to ask is this: when they think about money, who comes to mind or what comes to mind? See, when they think about money, they're either going to be thinking about the friendly State Farm agent down the street, or the Geico commercial with the caveman and the gecko, or the Susie Orman book they read, or the Dave Ramsey seminar they went to at church, or the Money magazine they got at the office talking about day trading penny stocks, the Morgan Stanley broker with the three-piece suit and the gelled hair. Or they're going to be thinking about you. We need them thinking about you. It's like, hey, you looking to roll over 401k? My daughter does that. Hey, you looking to change your car insurance? You should talk to my cousin. Hey, looking for some part-time work? My next-door neighbor does that. But if those people don't know what you do, well, those conversations never happen. So as soon as I understood that, as soon as I knew that that was the motive was not to recruit my grandma or sell my mother. The motive was to let the people that I cared most about know what I do so they could tell someone. Well, I didn't come to the table with like 5 names and phone numbers. I came with all 500 people that I know. Because if that was the motive, who would you leave off your list? Right? I want to tell everybody. Sometimes people, they try to rule people out. It's like, oh, I don't think Rich Uncle Joe needs any more help. Look, I don't care about Rich Uncle Joe. Rich Uncle Joe has Rich Uncle friends. And when their Schwab broker takes advantage of them, I need them to know that I do investments. See, it's about letting the people that you care about most know so they can tell somebody else. So let me wrap this up. Listen, if you were an attorney in this town, you would have no problem finding clients. Your biggest problem would be, how can I be in more than one courtroom at 10 a.m. on Friday? And the only way that you ever could was that you would hire and train somebody else. So 10 o'clock, you're in courtroom 1 and they're in courtroom 2. Look, in our business, you're not going to have any problem finding clients. People want to get out of debt and save money. They're a dime a dozen. Your biggest problem is, how can you be in more than one place at one time? And the only way you ever can is to hire and train somebody else. So Monday at 4, you're with the Johnsons, and they're with the Joneses. And it's that duplication that's the magic to what we do.